Because what we really need to do on our teams and everyone in our organization is understand them, understand what they're bringing to the table, understand where they came from, and then figure out what you need to do as the leader to help them get closer to your school's mission and vision.
We have with us Steve Druggan, who's right now the head of Springside Chestnut Hill Academy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's been teaching and leading in international schools, I think, more than 20 years now, Steve. Must be. You're getting old. No, yeah. And he's been in schools in Italy, in Germany, Indonesia, and including the school, yeah, that's right, those three. And then including schools like Jakarta Intercultural School, Munich International School, American School of Milan. So really brings a wealth of experiences of a great swath to all of us. When he's with us in the summer, which he has been for the last many years, he is a co-facilitator of our Leadership and Team Dynamics course. Steve, we are ready.
Awesome. Bambi, great to see you. And I am missing the berries in Florida for breakfast. The berries at that hotel are fantastic. Great to be here with everyone this morning. I'm gonna give a few shout outs to start. One of the special things about the PTC are the people that make it work. And just so I wanna give a shout out to Bambi, Gary, Zach, Sky, Nikki, and Carol. Every summer I get to see you and connect with you and just form those great memories, and that team is incredible. So thank you for making it all happen. Another piece that has been really special in my journey with PTC has been the co-trainers. I think or co-facilitators. I think one of the real strengths of the PTC, as opposed to other summer graduate programs, are that interaction between the co-trainers. And we each get so much better each summer because of that. And I just want to shout out to my former co-trainers and any of you out there in the world that survived us. Chris Bowman, Tim Stewart, Elsa Donahue, and Aaron Robinson. You were awesome. Thanks for putting up with me. And I learned so much from you as we journeyed together. So now to today. Today I'm going to try to highlight one of the long-standing pillars of this course. And it was actually mentioned in a previous Pearl. And try then to bring that long-standing Blanchard idea of situational leadership into a more contemporary context with a different twist. And so we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to share my screen and try to take us down that journey of taking a long-standing research of Blanchard and making it and tying it together with contemporary stuff. All right, let's give it a shot here. So pulling it all together through the platinum rule and pizza ovens. As we get towards the end of the week in PTC, we always talk about pulling it all together. And since I am day 16 or 17, Bambi, I'm towards the end of this, I thought it was time to pull some things together. This picture is a picture with me with a group of our parents at my current school who head up some of the fundraising efforts. And because they reached their goal of increasing our parent participation from 60 to 70%, I made them all pizzas one night. And we'll circle back to the pizza oven later on. So as Bambi shared, and as you know, there's kind of like a master class of leadership over the last 2 weeks. As I watched some of these, I picked out some carrots that really tie into what I think the essence of what Blanchard is saying. Tambi Tyler, when Bambi actually asked her a question at the end of her talk about advice getting through these times in America and the world as we take on the social issues that have been there but not necessarily addressed. And Tambi said, I advise you all to have 2 ears and 1 mouth. In other words, really listen to what people are saying. And Simon Gillespie shared a vignette about when he was moving into a leadership role, and the principal he worked with gave him the advice to wear a tie to earn respect. And that was really completely against who Simon was. And I think it's an example of when we don't get situational leadership right. And then Ron Lalonde, in his talk, he talked about going through professional evaluation process in the public system and how that was very much a pat on the back, you're great process, and very infrequent and no relationship, to his first experience in Mexico, where he got a pre-conference, he had a post-conference, and a relationship around his professional craft was born. And then Lee Fertig shared the idea of leadership by doing and leadership by caring. And I think if you get to the essence of Blanchard, it is, if you're truly being situational, you need to be caring about people. Matt Parr shared that you need to align your leadership approach with the needs of those you're leading. And I think you'll see that come out when I get to the second half of this pearl. Barry shared eloquently about leading in crisis, and how so much of that is about caring for people. Aaron shared a very poignant talk and said it's really essential for us as leaders to know our biases, prejudice, etc., that we bring to the role. Don't be naive to what you have inside you and the prejudice and biases we have. Just a shout out, if you have not read the book Whistling Vivaldi, it really pulls the research of our biases out and stereotype threats. So really want to give that a shout out. And then Melissa Schaub, in hers talked about our presence and how our presence grows the connections with people. And I think all of these are threads to Blanchard's work of situational leadership. So this is a very old page from the course book, but one that is still true today. And I just want to, if we were together, we actually spend the second day of leadership and team dynamics digging into this. And the core of it really is that as leaders, we have different tools to use. We can delegate, we can support, we can coach, we can direct in Blanchard's language. Now, there are lots of other words that are used, and when we take the course, we dig into other models, but that's Blanchard's language. And he puts forth that you need to choose the right tool for the right level, developmental level of the person you're working with. So if someone is highly committed, but new to the role or new to the situation, you need to use a different style than for someone who's highly competent, but lowly, doesn't have a lot of commitment. And the vignette I always share, because this is a classic, I think, in our independent school, international schools, independent schools, and Bambi always talked about this, is that we'll take someone who's a great teacher, you're the best English teacher, and all of a sudden you're the department chair. And do we give you training to be department chair? Do we actually help you understand what it means to chair a department? Usually not. And that's what really created the middle level leader training, so that great teacher who was in this model, highly competent and highly committed, and as their supervisor, you need to do very little other than help them grow. When they go into the new role, they're still highly committed, but they've never done that role before. So then what they need from you is different. And Blanchard's model is those things are changing all the time in every situation. And we need to be self-aware of which situation we're in, what the person that we're working with brings to the table. And because of that, what should we bring to the table? Now, taking that forward a little bit, in work I've done with some people around improv, they introduced me to the idea of the platinum rule. Treat others as they wish to be treated, as opposed to the golden rule, which was treat others as you would like to be treated. So I think the platinum rule is a contemporary twist for Blanchard's work, because what we really need to do on our teams and everyone in our organization is understand them, understand what they're bringing to the table, understand where they came from, and then figure out what you need to do as the leader to help them get closer to your school's mission and vision. This doesn't mean you're being loosey-goosey or soft and just doing what they want. It means that you're figuring out how to close the gap from where we are currently to where we want to be as a school. And going back to Blanchard's piece, we as leaders need to use different tools and different strategies depending on the developmental level of the person we're working with or the team we're working with, and we need to figure out where those are. luck, and as Lee Fertig said in his, there is no algorithm to this. There's no shortcut to how you do this. But there is some great tools to help us. If you were with us for LTD, you would take DISC. At our school, before I got here, they used something called the PI, the Predictive Index. There's the Strengths Finder. There's Myers-Briggs. There's lots of tools out there that organizations use so that we understand more about each other. But those tools alone are just giving us data. And that's an important thing, and I really encourage you to use tools. But they're also no substitute for spending time with each other, for being out and about, for getting to know each other. And I encourage you as leaders to figure out strategies that are authentic to you, that help you love your job, but also help you get to know the people in your job. One example, when I interview future candidates, and in my time in Munich and Jakarta, we were both, at those times, those schools were growing, and we were hiring anywhere from 30 to 60 teachers a year. And I only ever asked 3 questions, because I was usually the last interview. And I simply wanted to know about them and about their EQ. So I only asked 3 questions, because I assumed once we'd gone through their paperwork, once they'd been interviewed by department chairs and division heads, they could teach science, they could teach math. But I needed to know about their EQ, to know if their EQ was a match for organization. And then I needed to know more about them, so that I could make sure that we were a good match and could support them and welcome them and grow them. Because we know that as professionals, we want mastery, we want purpose. And if I don't know about you, and if we don't know about the people we employ, we can't help them get to mastery and purpose. So it's really important at the very beginning, I think, to dig into people and understand them, figure out how they would like to be treated, not so you're being soft, but so that you can help get to your mission. And now the second half of the pearl is always build a pizza oven. So this picture, the first picture was our pizza oven here in Philadelphia. This picture is our pizza oven we built in our backyard in Jakarta. And there I am with Tim Carr, who many of you may know, and 2 of the amazing moms from GIS. And on the left, the check marks are from a sad story, but a good story. As many of you probably know, GIS went through a pretty tough time. And we did a fundraiser to help support Ferdy's girls and make sure they had a tuition scholarship for the school they were going to. So we basically challenged the community to pay what you thought a pizza was worth. And we were able to raise $20,000 in one night by making pizzas and just saying, pay what you think it's worth. So the hashtags are how many pizzas we made in 3 hours. So Tim and I were the pizza makers, and these parents here, Yusni and Marge, made sure the parents came out and put significant contributions into the vase so that Ferdy's girls could make sure they had an education while he was unjustly incarcerated. So the beginning, I showed how we use pizzas here in Philly. This is how we use pizzas in Jakarta. And the last thing, before we go to questions, I also realized that not everyone wants pizzas. So I also had to learn something new when I moved back to America, how to smoke barbecue, because everyone loves barbecue. So some people, if you really know your people, some of them want pizza, some of them want barbecue. So you have to keep learning so that you can meet people where they are. So in a nutshell, situational leadership, the platinum rule, and break bread or pull pork. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Bambi can grill me.
Your participants here, great. Yeah, that's so great, Steve. Thank you for. There are many. There's such questions are starting to come in. I have one, and I've also made 4 points that I hope we will have time to address. So let me go to the first question from participants. Is could you share the 3 questions you asked? So you mentioned 3. And yeah, that's always a mistake. In my view, if you say 3, then you got to say 3. Now you have to say the other 2. What are they?
No, they're really simple. And so don't expect too much. The first one is simply tell me your story. And they, if they start too late in their life, I then redirect them back earlier in their life. I want to know, I think it's really important to know where people came from. And then the second one comes from the book. The first one is just pretty generic, but I think it's really important. The second one's equally important, and it is supposed to be a good way to get to EQ. And that is, and I kind of piggyback off the first one, and I get to, so who's someone that knows you really well in life? And the person says, you mean professionally or personally? I said personally. And I say, okay, if they were here, what would be 2 strengths they would tell us about you? And they go on, they tell that, and then what are 2 areas you need to improve? The idea about the research in EQ is when you ask people will be more honest when you ask them to say what somebody else would say about them than what they'd say about themselves. And then the third one is, I usually do 3 or 4. Somewhere in there, I'll want to know why they think why our school at that time. And then the fourth piece, and this is one that Tim Carr always used to do, so now I use it since I don't interview with Tim anymore. What role do you take on a team, and how does that change, or how does that change in different teams you're in? And looking to see if the person is self-reflective enough. So 2 of them are more about the person in our school and their life, and then 2 are more about their EQ and their self-actualization.
And when you get the answers, does 1 or 2 of those questions, or do 1 or 2 of those questions sort of have more value to you than others, or you just look at them as a whole?
I mean, the first question has a lot of value to me if that person ends up joining us, because when you then see them on campus or see them, you can talk to them about something that's in their life, and that really matters to people. Understanding how self-actualized they are is really important in hiring. I think, especially in today's times where flexibility and resilience are so necessary. So that they're both important, but I think for different reasons.
So one of the not really a conundrum, but one of the the issues that we deal with all the time is how self-reflective is a teacher. In other words, how much do they actually know themselves? So that if the idea is that we want to treat them the way they want to be treated, then to some degree it relies on their ability to be, genuinely self-reflective and not just to be delusional about who they are and what they need, to be frank. So could you talk to that for a moment? How do you balance that out?
No, and I think it speaks to the culture of your organization. If we really want professionals that are reflective of their practice, are we as an organization being reflective of our practice? And am I as a leader being reflective of our practice? I thought Lee gave a really good answer to this in his Pearl. And he talked about his vulnerability when he became the new head at Russell's. So how are we in our writing, in our videos we make, how are we showing that we're reflecting and growing? And then how are we building that into team meetings? I mean, how are we making that part of our organizational culture, Bambi, I guess? Like, are we taking time to do that organizationally at all levels? Or are we just simply, it's the end of the year, let's move on. Schools can really speed up in May and June and then just, we made it, and don't unpack and reflect. So how are we building that into the year?
Yeah, and at the level of the individuals, I know, and we have some other questions, I'll get to them. The individual, if they have a strange idea about what their strengths are, and you're trying to play to those strengths, that starts to be, a leadership skill, is how to play the middle of that so that you still are able to play to strength. At the same time, recognize that person may not really be that fully aware of what their actual strengths are. We often have people.
How do we get data around that, right? And because and that was in one of the earlier pearls, that third leg in the room is some data around the person's practice. I'm dealing with a situation right now that I don't have an answer to, because this person in our organization's self-perception is so out of line with what the rest of us see, and just doesn't get it.
And I think we get to be neutral, we get some unusual practices. For example, we rotate leadership of a department. Like, sorry, you guys, by now many of you know, we'll just be direct. That's a really bad idea because it's just assuming that everybody has that strength and those kids that year will get good leadership from their department or their year group. So that's not necessarily the case. And so what has to come first? You know, the growth of the teacher, letting them have that opportunity, or staying focused on the kids and the purpose of having that team to begin with. Okay, here are some more questions. How do you evaluate a potential employer asking for reasons leaving a current position, and should the answer be more honest or diplomatic?
Honest. I think it should be honest. Like, not every school's a match for every person. There's nothing wrong with that. Just say, be honest. You could have been hired by one head, that head left, the culture of the school changed. You could have been hired, and not every place is a match, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't know, or you're just burned out. And Bambi probably knows this about me, and I'm probably like, Bambi's rubbed off on me. Just be direct and honest with me. We're adults. Like, we know that, and I think we've all seen people who thrived in an organization, then it didn't work. They went to another organization and they thrived. Or people that thrived in an organization, I recommend them to another school and it didn't work out there. I mean, there's so many variables. What's happening in your life? Just be honest. And don't be afraid to say you were the problem. There were problems at the school, and I was and for me at that time in my life, I wasn't at my best because of all these things. I realize that now, because as a head, the fact that you can identify that and own it, going back to Bambi's earlier point about, reflectiveness, just own it. If the school, I think there is a fine line to say, you can say, I took a job at this school, it wasn't what I thought it was, so I need to leave. You don't need to then go into 16 paragraphs about what the head of school did wrong, what the principal did wrong. Just keep it general, but be honest.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, another question. How do you maintain high morale during a pandemic or similar?
So I've been mentally reflecting a lot on the difference in managing this crisis and managing our challenges in Jakarta for those 2 years. And we have done, so the pillar I laid out at the very beginning in February here was that we will get through this based on the mental health of our faculty and the well-being of our faculty. And so every decision we make, we take that into consideration. So I called 10 faculty every day at 4 o'clock. Because we have 220 employees, I pick up the phone, every day I called 10 until I got through 220. Teacher Appreciation Week, we decided to create bags to support the local businesses. And then we drove these bags to all 220 employees and took them to their house. It made me learn I never want to be a UPS driver. My wonderful wife Pia drove with me, and if you ever want to check, that's a good marriage check, is can you drive around for 6 hours on 4 straight days. Thank God for Google Maps. I think you have to listen, you have to be honest, and it is this, and then there will be bad days. You also, depending on how bad, where you are, can you arrange for mental health services for faculty to get access to? And are you bringing in mental health services for your leadership team? So we've just arranged here, we're bringing someone on site for our leadership team on August 10th and all the deans so that they're really prepared to try to help people, because people have been locked in their houses since March, and now we're saying come back on campus with 1,000 kids. So I guess in summary, call people and communicate, and you have to find that balance between optimism and realism.
So when you write that book, would you please give us all a free copy on the balance between realism and optimism? That's a great summary. So thank you so much, Steve. I can see from the